is Mrs. Monica Stankiewicz, who's the Executive Secretary of HELCOM. Please welcome Mrs. Stankiewicz.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have to say that it was a great pleasure for me to follow the morning session. I really enjoyed it, and I think I also learned a lot how to approach the topic. And so thank you very much for the invitation. And what I would like to start with is just to go a little bit back in time. Maybe some of you know or remember that the major sign of global recognition of environmental concerns was the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment. It was held in 1972 in Stockholm, and it was upon initiative of Sweden. And there were 26 principles agreed at this conference, and I will let you read them and make your own observations about them. And there are 2 slides.
Sorry, we seem to have a technical problem. Could we have some?
No.
No?
With the screen. Yes.
Yeah. Technical assistance is approaching here.
But as you can see, perhaps later you can study, at least I found it really interesting that some of the phrases were actually about the ecosystem approach, about maritime spatial planning, and there were some which perhaps may sound a little bit old-fashioned, that we moved forward with our approaches since then. And what happened 2 years later was in 1974, the international community around the Baltic Sea decided to react and to do something about the protection of the marine environment. And at that time, 7 countries bordering the Baltic Sea signed the Helsinki Convention. And despite the Cold War, the Baltic Sea protection was a good reason to cooperate, and this was the startup of the intergovernmental HELCOM cooperation, which now involves 10 contracting parties, including 9 coastal states and EU. All right. And EU is currently holding a chairmanship in HELCOM. And since these 2 events in 72, 74, the efforts to ensure sustainable development continued globally and regionally, as well as in the individual countries. And we had 40th anniversary, not so... I think I need the other device back to... Oh yes, sorry, it's okay. So we had our nice slogan for the 40th anniversary of HELCOM, that life gets better after 40, so is it so? And perhaps since I'm not given too much time to talk about all the successes, I would like to bring one maybe symbolic proof of change and improvement, and this is the ever-increasing number of organizations granted observership to HELCOM. And there are nowadays 50 such international governmental and non-governmental organizations. Transparency, involvement of civil society, and engagement of private sector are for good part of the cooperation in the Baltic Sea. 15 of those observers are the Baltic regional organizations, and this is only top of the iceberg, as there are many more stakeholders active in the countries and on a local level, interested in the marine environment protection and in the Baltic Sea issues in general. I sometimes meet my colleagues from other regional sea conventions, so sea basin organizations around the world, and there are 18 of them, and often I hear from them that the lack of regular cooperation between the ministries of foreign affairs on a regional level, or lack of engagement of local level, and also business sector is a real obstacle in moving forward to achieve the ocean goals. And then this makes me realize again and again how unique situation in the Baltic Sea is in terms of bottom-up initiatives, resources, and possibilities to act. And at the same time, this is a great responsibility that we all have to deliver some tangible results through this cooperation. Last week, within HELCOM, we had a high-level segment on ocean sustainable development goals, and the representatives from the contracting parties discussed how those could be met in the Baltic Sea. and in particular in relation to eutrophication, marine litter, and climate change. I will not go into the details of the outcome. You can find it on our website. But what contracting parties have agreed is that they would coordinate the regional implementation of ocean-related sustainable development goals in the Baltic Sea using the HELCOM platform. And also they concluded that the strengthened implementation of the Baltic Sea Action Plan is needed to fulfill the 2030 agenda in the Baltic Sea. I hope many or most of you know about the HELCOM Baltic Sea Action Plan and that it covers all major environmental problems in the Baltic Sea. It's been already 10 years since its adoption, and we had also two ministerial declarations that complement the Baltic Sea Action Plan, and we follow the progress closely. There are over 100 regional actions with measurable targets in the action plan, and so far 66 of them have been implemented. And I will let you reflect yourself whether the glass is half full or empty. And in addition, there are around 70 national level actions for which we are also measuring progress, and all this information is public. It is contained in so-called HELCOM Explorer on the website. So we follow the progress, but also we try now through the new momentum to work on sustainability, to look into how our work and our commitments match the Sustainable Development Goals and the individual targets. And the conclusion is that they are quite well aligned. We will be releasing soon a report where one can find more details about it. And there will be also in a few months' time a major assessment released by HELCOM assessing the status of the entire sea, the pressure and cumulative impacts from human activities on land and at sea, as well as covering social and economic analysis. And contracting parties decided that this report will be used as a baseline situation for future implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. So Sweden initiated in 1972 the summit. And now, 45 years later, Sweden is also co-chairing and co-funding together with Fiji the Global UN Conference on Sustainable Goal 14 in June. So did life get better after 40? And I'm happy that I'm actually quite in sync with the previous speakers to confirm the facts and be positive. And this is one of the trends that we are able to draw from the work that has been done through last century. And this is a success story of reducing phosphorus, a nutrient that is needed for growth and which has been wasted since 50s through improper management and practices. And we can see a peak in 80s, but then the trend has been reversed, and we are moving towards reaching the target that we have set ourselves. So this is quite a positive story, but also a story of how long-term perspective one has to take and how much persistence is needed really to fulfill the 2030 agenda. And I think we are quite persistent in HELCOM, and I'm sure that you are persistent as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you ever so much. Well, I think we all sort of have come across HELCOM and this important actor throughout the years. And you touched upon it in your presentation, the connection now between the new SDGs and HELCOM's way of working. Can you see that they can benefit, or are they sort of replacing each other, or how do you see this coming ahead?
We would very much like to use this momentum to push for implementation of the Baltic Sea Action Plan, and we have last week heard from the contracting parties that they would like to speed up the work on marine litter, eutrophication, climate change, circular economy, and also sustainable fisheries practices, sustainable agriculture practices. But what could perhaps be new in HELCOM work is that since the last 2 years, we have embarked on social and economic analysis. So we would like to know what are the benefits from using the Baltic Sea and what are the costs of degradation. And we have started this work because there had been in the Baltic great research done on this. So we are in position to put a regional framework and piece by piece put the elements in place. Maybe it will take us another decade, but this is a very necessary work which will also help us to see SDGs in a better interconnected way and breach these different targets among themselves.
It's really interesting. Can I check if there is a question from the audience in the regular old-fashioned way, not just a Twitter? I mean, you are allowed actually to use your voice if you want to. Anyone who... I know you were shocked now. You weren't prepared at all for this. No one wants to ask a question to HELCOM? Be aware, we might suddenly do this, so be prepared. In the session we heard before, really a lot of the connection and the importance of engaging the local level. HELCOM is a regional body, it's an intergovernmental body in that sense. Have you also managed much more to connect with the local level, or do you see that this is something you need to do as you move forward when you're implementing the SDGs, for instance?
Yeah, I think the minister mentioned earlier that this was discussed by the contracting parties last week in our high-level session. It was actually Sweden who brought it forward, and it was quite welcome that we would be working more to engage municipalities and local level to the Baltic Sea Action Plan implementation. I think we could have done better to communicate what we need and to make our regional targets more understandable on a local municipal level. I think we have had also a lot of initiatives, foundations and projects who filled in the gap that we didn't fill in. And we would very much like to see how we can make this extra mile and to have this finishing line with engagement of all of you. But I would also welcome ideas how we can do, how HELCOM could be better in this regard.
And this, as you mentioned, you're adding the socio-economic dimensions, really. Is that something that you have then realized means that you can connect with new stakeholders that you didn't work with before?
Or we can connect better. We keep trying connecting and to have this integrated approach. And I think maybe it will take a lot of time to get really a lot of data and like substantiate what does it mean in terms of economic growth and in terms of social benefits. But as a first initial step, we would like to communicate better what needs to be done for the Baltic Sea. And this kind of social economic analysis, they allow to do it.
Okay.
The HELCOM, I mean, some people say that, what's the matter, we don't need HELCOM, it doesn't have a legal sort of impliance, you don't have to do it, etc. Would you say that the SDGs will help this along, sort of put even more power within the HELCOM structure?
I have my own view about HELCOM not being binding or being binding. I think some 20 years ago we were in a different situation. Most of the countries around the Baltic Sea were non-EU countries, so we had this special mission to make sure that we have a harmonized and unified regulations and standards. But with time I also realized that what makes things move forward is combination of different tools. And the legislative tools, they have a benefit that you can kind of execute and have fines for not compliance, but also they tend to make stakeholders and countries go to a minimum level. But then we can complement with this approach where we have a higher ambition in HELCOM, and I think they both then together bring better effect than each of them separately.
Thank you. We'll be coming back to the legal issues later. Yes.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much.